Radha Kundam Girivaram Maho Radhika Maravasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurun Tamnatosmi Shri Srimad Bhagavad Param Bhoja Madhu Svarot Savarshad Pore Nikshipta Madhu Bhindavashcha Parito Brashtat Mukhat Kunjitai Yatnait Kinchidi Harita Shayartana Tanmaya Bhuyo Bhuyo Ito Rajangsi Pada Sanglagnani Tisham Vaje Namo Mahavrunaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gaura Tishe Namah. Well, I'm honored to be welcomed into the assembly of the exalted Vaishnavas here in SoCal, Seva Ashram at the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari, which is the abode of Gupta Govardhan, revealed by our Gurudev Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj, and which is looked after here by the guardian servitor Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardhan Maharaj, and we're in the wonderful company of Srila Bhakti Kusum Ashram Maharaj and the other senior devotees, as well as the community assembled for the regular Sunday feast. So I'm a little late because I was having fun getting to do some seva with Hasupriya Prabhu and the other devotees for the Via Govinda that's being widened in preparation for the coming Govinda Mela. So, excuse me for my lateness. I don't know if there's is there any theme of discussion for today or any particular topic that we're focused on?
Oh,
No?
just discuss the Govinda Mela and the camp in Mexico, that's all.
Okay, nice. Well then I won't say the same things that have already been said if you've already heard about them. We can discuss some tattva or some harikatha if anyone has any particular subject they'd like to.
No.
I don't know how to choose between you.
I was just trying to.
Lindy was asking, block.
The holy day.
I just want, if you can merciful, can say the translation of the beautiful mantras that you were saying, if it's possible.
Sure. Well, these are well-known verses. The first is Raghunath Das Goswami Prabhu's pranam at the feet of Sri Guru, rejoicing in remembrance of all that Sri Guru in the line of Gauranga Mahaprabhu gives. So saying he is the giver of the name supreme, the giver of the mantra, the giver of Mahaprabhu, Sarup Damodar, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, the other Goswamis, as well as Mathura, Vrindavan, Govardhan, Radha Kunda, and the aspiration, or rather the hope of having the service of Radha Madhava there. So all of this is revealed by the mercy of Sri Gurudev, so Das Goswami is offering his pranam there. And in Sri Guru and his grace, Srila Guru Maharaj, after some, you may say, controversial discussion, where he's making some points in matters of Siddhanta which differed from the policies of a particular society at that time. Then, to soften the tension felt in this discussion, then he said, this is what we are here for, whether we are in Society A, Society B, Group 1, Group 2, Line 3, Section 4, if we are a Gaudiya Vaishnava, if we have faith in Mahaprabhu and the Siddhanta revealed by the Goswamis, then we are out for this. And everything else is secondary, everything else is superficial, everything else is something that's meant to help us learn to appreciate that goal and serve it in truth. So these things, he said, in a word, what is ISKCON? It is this. In other words, it's the ideal, not even the organization founded for the sake of ideal, that we really cherish within our hearts. And that is really what is backed by Shastra, backed by the interest of the Absolute. So he spoke this verse and what is described there as to be this. And then the second verse is composed by Guru Maharaj himself. Sometimes I like to recite that in lieu of a general prayer to the Vaishnavas. This is how Guru Maharaj concluded his Prapana Jivanamrita, and what Gurudev on some occasions described to be his favorite sloka, in which he is offering pranams repeatedly to all of those bees that are immersed in this festival of tasting the lotus feet of the Lord, and due to their inebriation have allowed some drops of that nectar collected from the lotus of Bhagavan's feet to slip and scatter about. So Guru Maharaj presents himself as a collector of scattered nectar, and who is both tasting that nectar, arraying that nectar for the tasting of others, and repeatedly offering his obeisances to all those persons who are, or all those bees in the lotus feet of Bhagavan, who are, without even intending to, allowing this nectar to spread. And ultimately we can say this touches upon Uddhava's prayers after he visits Vrindavan, where lastly he says, Vande Brajashrinam Padurenam Abhikshnasa Jasam Harikathodgitam Punati Bhuvanatrayam. I bow down and repeatedly pray for the dust of the feet of those ladies of Nanda's Braja, because their songs in praise of Hari purify the three worlds. So of course, the gopis, as they sing in praise of Krishna, they have no idea that they're purifying the three worlds, nor even any concern for doing so. They are moved so intensely by thought and remembrance of Krishna. They're just acting naturally according to the feelings in their hearts. But, so to speak, unbeknownst to them, the entire universe is purified in the most profound way by these songs sung in the deepest form of divine love. So, as these bees that Guru Maharaj describes are humming and collecting nectar from the lotus feet of Krishna and allowing this to drop, then it is something like that. So these are some prayers to the Vaishnavas, or a way of doing so. And at that I didn't say it, but I'll also say it now. Something that I also like, one line of Kaviraj Goswami, he says, Ite aparada morna loyo bhaktagan Tomasavar Charanamor Akanta Sharam. That saying, oh devotees, please don't take any offense at me, because your feet are my one and only shelter. So this is the feeling in these prayers, that, like a fire, it keeps us warm, but also it burns us. So it is both extremely necessary for us, but also to be dealt with very carefully. Such are the Vaishnavas in our life. They are our life and soul, but also can, if we are not careful, be the opposite. So with that great care and admiration and also caution, then we come and feel most blessed to have the association of the Vaishnavas. And Prabhu mentioned also the importance of speaking about Sri Harinam. So these things combined in what we call the Sri Harinam Sankirtan, where together with Vaishnavas we want to engage in the chanting of Harinam. And this presupposes then that the Dharma of this age requires the ability to cooperate. And that it is, both in the chanting of Harinam and in the qualities that are necessary for chanting Harinam, that there is something tangibly satisfying to Krishna. So, how many times have we heard Trinadapi Sunichena Taroriva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari, which means be someone that knows how to get along with other people. In a nutshell, it's that simple. To be humble, to be tolerant, to respect others, to not pout if they don't respect you. Basically it means be nice and work well with others. And if you're able to, then you'll be qualified to participate in the Sankirtan that Mahaprabhu revealed. And you'll be welcome into the association of those wonderful devotees who are irresistibly drawn to the Lord and ever engaged in His glorification and service. So with those qualities then, we are encouraged to chant Sri Harinam, or Kirtaniya Sadahari, that this will be something that we are doing always, that constantly, our every act, our every word, our every thought, let it be in praise of the Lord. In other words, let all glory go to Him, let His glory be expanded by my every thought, word and deed. So if really we are sincere about that, then that means that our every word is for the expansion of His glory and not our idea of our own. So this is why Pratishta is considered the greatest antithesis to the cultivation of bhakti, and why Sanatana Goswami, in the conclusion of his Hari Bhakti Vilas, which we can say is the most elaborate rule book offered by any of the Gaudiya Vaishnava acharyas about how sadachar and other matters are to be conducted. Then after 20 vilasas and thousands of slokas, then he gives one final advice. So, if anyone ever takes the time to read the entire Hari Bhakti Vilas, then what will be the final advice of this book? It will hit you very strongly. It will ring very strong that you've heard so many rules, so many technical things dealt with. But what is the thing, the guideline to be remembered above all of them? Right? Then he has this sloka of his own composition. How does it go? Sarva tyagapyehiya sarva narta bhuvaschate pratishta vishtaya kuryad pratishta vishaya asparshane jatne varam, which is a very clever expression, saying that pratishta is the cause of every anartha and is very difficult to give up even after all else has been given up. In other words, you can successfully give up all else, but you'll still struggle with this. And it is the cause of every other anartha that you'll suffer from. And he compares it to vishta, which is stool, or, Saraswati Thakur classified it as pig stool, which means not only ordinary stool, but really dirty stool. Because pigs, they eat stool and then produce stool, right? So it's like doubly stool. But at the same time, you might say, what is this, right? Because naturally Vaishnavas, they are shown honor by other Vaishnavas. How dare you compare that affectionate honor that Vaishnavas honor to other Vaishnavas to stool? Someone may object, or someone may have some concern about this remark. So we can say it is not meant to be taken in the absolute sense, but meant to be taken in the context of a cautionary statement. In other words, although it is not inherently of that nature, it is like that nature for someone plagued with egotism and struggling to come out from the illusion that they are in. For them, it will have that effect. So, Sanatana Goswami recommends understanding Pratishta is like stool, it is the cause of all your anarthas, it is the greatest, most difficult thing to give up. Then he says, to try to not be touched by it is best. This is a precise statement. Right? He doesn't say reject it. He says, to try to not be touched by it is best. So what does it mean? It means that actually you can never escape it. And the pastime of Madhavendra Puri is direct evidence of this, where it is explained that if a Vaishnava is sincerely engaged in the service of the Lord, it will be impossible for them to evade Pratishta. And although Madhavendra Puri, he tried, he could not, because it was Bhagavan's own will that he would get it. Because actually it is Bhagavan's own affection and desire, and it is the way by which he, receives service through devotees.
But also in that story, that pratishta became necessary. The Chaitanya Charitamrita says that after he was honored at Rimuna, he tried to, during the night, to run away and go to Jagannath Puri, but it said that pratishta ran faster than him. And when he got to Jagannath Puri, he was being honored. He was known as a great Vaishnava. But he had a task to do, and that task was to collect the chandan for Gopal. Because he was being honored in Puri, then the government and everyone presented him with chandan and everything. So the pratishta actually was part of, receiving that pratishta actually became part of him completing his service. Because otherwise it would have been hard to get those materials, but because he was so honored, everyone just donated to that.
Precisely. So this is why Sanatan says it's not to be rejected, but to try to not be touched by it is best. Because in this case, as Maharaj is telling us, it is Bhagavan's will that he would have it. Because that is the means by which Bhagavan gets the seva from him that he wanted. So this, no doubt, was not the intent or not the inclination of Madhavendra Puri, we can say. So that also is necessary, to give up one's own inclination to or to not have some particular perception of you by others within society as you would like. But rather, what people will think of you, how they will treat you, that is his arrangement. And we have to accept that, whatever it may be. And our attention will be to fulfilling this desired service that has come to us. And what will come up in the course of that, that is to be welcomed, or that is to be accepted as it may come. And, the opposite is also true. In some cases, like Sudama Vipra, throughout the Bhagavatam, we also get the opposite examples, Bharat Maharaj. They're persons who were of very glorious standing as renounced persons, but by the will of Bhagavan, they were also then observed to either incur some worldly fortune or be perceived to have some attachment to something of the world. But this is explained that there is a section in the beginning of the 5th canto, a little interesting point, when the life of Maharaj Priyavrata is described, if anyone recalls these points in the Bhagavatam. That Parikshit Maharaj is a little surprised by this account, because he sees that Maharaj Priyavrata attains the Supreme, but yet at the same time is described to have ruled the world and been a glorious king in the world for so long. So then he says, how is it possible that someone is simultaneously attached to the things of this world and attached to Krishna? You can only be in one place at one time. You can only think of one thing at one moment. So you're either thinking of him or you're not. And when it really comes down to it, you're either attached to him or you're not. So how is it that he appears to be otherwise? And Shukadev Goswami says, good question. This is a good point. Right? And then it comes out that there are two causes by which we may observe the apparent fall down, or not even, we don't even like that word, but just to understand what I'm pointing at with these terms. And rather we can say some lapse or some slackening in the bhajan of a particular person. How does it come about? Then it is said it is of two causes. One, it may be the result of aparad. It may be that they have committed some offense. But the second cause is that it may be Bhagavan's own arrangement. He also may arrange for this. And he says, that was the case of this Maharaj, that was the case of Bharat Maharaj, that was the case of various others. And that we find also in the Garbhastuti, in the beginning of the 10th canto, then this verse also coming in further discussion of that, saying that those persons who are your own, but yet are observed to somehow neglect you, or somehow have a lapse, or some wrong in the midst of their service, they ultimately are seen to still come to you. And how is it so? Then it is understood that in those cases, that difficulty or that obstacle that came in that person's life was put there by the Lord Himself. And that as a result of quote-unquote falling down, or as a result of making that mistake, then the prem of Chitraketu, the prem of Bharat Maharaj, the prem of these persons increased 100 times.
Srila Govind Maharaj, he gave an example of one devotee who he called for doing some service. And he said, sometimes when one faces an obstacle, it can be compared to a great distance which one has to jump over. He said that in order to do that, you can't just go to the edge and jump over. You have to go back some distance. And you go back some distance, apparently you're making lack of progress. You're going backwards. But you're going back some distance so that you can acquire some speed at running to that edge and then jump over it. But sometimes it's necessary, he said, to go backwards in order to be able to attain some speed to overcome an obstacle. That was an example he gave.
Bhumoskalita paranam bhumireva valambanam tvayijata paradanam tameva sharanam prabhu. As someone who has slipped uses the ground to right themselves, so also someone who offends you relies upon you to set themselves right.
You referring to the Lord.
So, to get to our theme, right, about Harinam, then these points are being made to say that Harinam is like that ground. Harinam is like that fundamental shelter that is always with us, that is always there, and that can be turned to by anyone under any condition. Right? Where all else may fail, but Harinam is there. These such praises are there in the Padma Puran, where the 10 offenses to Harinam are listed, and many other glories of Harinams, as recounted by Mahaprabhu himself. That for persons who've committed every type of sin, every type of offense, if they take shelter of Harinam, then it will all be set right. So, when we want to chant the holy name, then we will feel this, that it is our shelter, that it is the basis of all hope and prospect and joy in our life. So in that sense, we can remember Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nas Deva Nas Deva Nas Deva Gatiran Yatha. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way in the name of Hari, the name of Hari, the name of Hari. Why is it said 3 times? For emphasis. So, Thakur Bhaktivinoda, he also mentioned that in regard to the 10th offense to Harinam, that we shall sustain our material attachments even after having heard about Hari. How could we? If we really heard about Hari, then what is left to be attached to? There is not so much analysis actually. If we can understand who is God, we prefer Hari, Bhagavan, Krishna, all these nice names, but really simply to comprehend the reality of that will dissolve every other interest, every other apparent aspiration. So the Bhagavatam is built on this idea. Dhamna svena sada nirastuku hakam satyam param dhimahi. Come and meditate on that supreme eternal, by whose divine splendor all illusion is forever dispelled. And how are we to do so? Then, Hari Bhagavatam, that's number 1, then Bhagavatam number 18,000, whatever it is at the end, right? Nama Sankirtanam Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam Pranamo Shamano Durka Shamanos Tam Namami Harim Param.